the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies really is rooted in the lived experience of Black people around this country. There are a plethora of think tank organizations around the US, but they're not led by a Black board, by a prominent Black staff, and that is Black focus, meaning its mission is to uplift Black people.
The Joint Center plays a unique role with its origins coming out of the civil rights movement.
From the beginning, activists were moving into positions of influence in terms of being elected for the first time as a result of the Voting Rights Act when the Joint Center was founded in 1970.
It's important that an entity was created like the Joint Center to keep a record of the degree of involvement and engagement of Black Americans in the electoral process, the extent to which Black Americans are represented in Congress in particular, but also at the state legislative levels.
It's been a source of information, especially for the Congressional Black Caucus. It's been an important source of communication. And one of the consistencies has been the convening power of the Joint Center.
I think the Joint Center does a couple of things really well. It allows people to understand the information, but it has done so in a rigorous way.
We look to the center for their critical analysis around how different policy and legislative proposals will impact Black people.
The Joint Center has been that liaison for us in many ways, having the convening power to really be able to operate as a liaison and to organize the information that organizers need. That data actually empowered us on the ground that really wanted to let voters know that what was important, what was at stake.
When the Joint Center calls, people come.
We have paid a lot of attention to the center's focus on the future of work, the impact of, economic and pandemic-related changes on African-American workers and communities.
We found in our initial study that 27% of African-Americans were concentrated in just 30 jobs at high risk to automation, right? It's actually very simple study in terms of comparing the automation of jobs to racial data in terms of who's in what job. But we want to move forward and we want to help folks leapfrog forward in terms of mobility, social and economic mobility.
We've actually partnered with the Joint Center on a number of events and conversations and activities as it relates to the future of work for Black communities, particularly as it relates to strengthening, scaling, and building Black businesses around this country. We think it's the most strategic and fastest way to address the racial wealth divide impacting our community.
The Lumina Foundation has provided a $750,000 grant to the Joint Center to help build this policy agenda for Black America around the future of learning and work. We see this as an initial investment in terms of a long-term relationship with the Joint Center in order to help close educational attainment gaps for African Americans.
The research and reports they did on the failure of members of Congress to hire racially diverse senior staff has been really important in catalyzing improvement in those numbers.
And we found that even though African Americans are about 13% of the US population, they were less than 1% of top staff. And just really tracking and lifting up the data has resulted in changes.
It's one of those things that if it's not brought to your attention, maybe it's not on your radar. And I think it's safe to say it's now on folks' radar.
With regard to the transition, we've got 45 Black organizations, and they are identifying strong, talented people to put forward. And as a result, we've collected 2,100 resumes so far, and we're working to try to make sure that these folks are prepped for interviews and ready to go in.
The instances where the problems and the solutions potentially match up so that you can actually make progress are rarer than people think. And we are at one of those moments now. And the Joint Center is one of the best positioned organizations to help take advantage of that. It's one of the premier think tanks, and certainly the premier think tank around race issues in the United States.
I am so grateful to the sponsors of the organization, the corporations, the foundations that have had faith in us and who have continued to support us.
We're humbled by the fact that we're able to do this work on a day-to-day basis. Thanks for being a part of what we're trying to build and what we're trying to give to Black communities in the form of America's Black Think Tank.
50 years is an anniversary that's of great significance, and I would like to say that I, like many others, are grateful for the work that the Joint Center has done and look forward to its future contributions.
55 years ago, when we had the Voting Rights Act and the voting rights that came from the voting rights movement. And so you were right on the edge on 50 years ago. Like immediately the Joint Center came in existence and responded to the needs of our people. And you continue to stand there and be there for us. And I am just really, really honored to know the people who have been a part of this. And I'm looking forward for us to continue to move our communities forward.